Good morning, everyone. I'm Errol Barnett in for Vladimir Duthier. Right now, we're gathering updates on breaking news out of the Middle East with the return of all living hostages from Gaza, the release of Palestinian prisoners, and the beginning of phase 2 of the peace process. And this is replicating itself so many times, so many emotional scenes in Israel this morning as families are reunited with their loved ones after 738 days in Hamas captivity. Both sides are now coordinating the return of remains of those hostages who did not survive, and we'll have more on that later this hour. Meanwhile, Israel is releasing some 2,000 Palestinian prisoners and detainees. This is footage of buses carrying them out from Israel. Many have been brought to Gaza and the West Bank. And this is all part of President Trump's peace plan, 20-point peace plan to end the war in Gaza. And President Trump began his victory lap addressing Israel's parliament today. He received a long-standing ovation. He thanked all of those who made this day possible and said this is just the first step in creating what he called a golden age for the Middle East.
This is not only the end of a war. This is the end of an age of terror and death and the beginning of the age of faith and hope and of God. It's the start of a grand concord and lasting harmony for Israel and all the nations of what will soon be a truly magnificent region. I believe that so strongly. This is the historic dawn of a new Middle East.
CBS News contributor Robert Berger joins us now from Jerusalem. Robert, great to see you again. You and I watched this hour-plus speech to the Knesset. President Trump, only the 4th U.S. president to be invited to make such remarks. What has been the reaction in Israel to this morning's event? Because I know opinion is split between how people feel about Prime Minister Netanyahu and the overwhelming support they feel toward President Trump.
Well, the speech was really, Israelis were very moved by it. I mean, it was almost like a Zionist speech. I mean, he was very visionary, very supportive of Israel, praising, for instance, the Israeli army, which has taken a lot of criticism from the Europe and other countries. He praised the Israeli army for standing firm. He talked about the accomplishments of the state of Israel, that the state of Israel will endure forever. These kind of things, as well as talking about a broader regional peace. So certainly for Israelis, it was a very positive speech. He also praised Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu quite a bit, which some Israelis who opposed Netanyahu didn't like as much. But overall, I think Israelis were very moved by the speech.
Yeah, at one point, the president even encouraging, I think, the Israeli president to give Bibi Netanyahu a pardon. As we know, Netanyahu has been part of an ongoing corruption trial there. So Mr. Trump having a number of unscripted moments as well that made his opinions clear. During his address, he hailed what he called the, quote, historic dawn of a new Middle East. How have these 2 years of conflict, though, the war, changed the region?
Well, I mean, it's caused deep wounds. For instance, Israelis are very skeptical about the possibility of peace with the Palestinians. We have a ceasefire, okay? And President Trump was talking about peace. I think Israelis are skeptical about peace. And then, of course, on the Palestinian side, you have over 65,000 people killed, the territory in Gaza totally destroyed. You're going to have animosity from the families of all the people who have been killed. So it's going to be very difficult to heal these wounds.
We plan to speak with a relative of a hostage who died during these 2 years later this hour. So, Robert, based on what you've just laid out, how, on the Israeli side of this equation, can the nation move forward? Because there's been so much vitriol, so much trauma, so much pain and death that it's likely to stay with them the rest of their lives. So how does the country proceed?
Look, getting the hostages back is going to bring a lot of healing. I mean, this is something that has just overshadowed the country for the past 2 years. Every newscast, there have been interviews with the families of the hostages. It just overshadowed everything. Now that the living hostages have gotten back alive, still have to see the remains of other hostages get back, but that's going to start the process of rebuilding. Of course, the country is still deeply divided, between right and left. But the fact that the hostages are back, that the war is finally ending, that reservists are going to be able to get out and get back to their jobs, I think people are hoping that maybe life can gradually get back to normal and that the nation can rebuild.
Yeah, and we did see 2 parliamentary members expelled during Trump's speech for interrupting, evident of some of the fissures there. Thank you very much, Robert Berger in Jerusalem for us. Let's jump now to Ramy Inocencio in London. Ramy, you were also watching these speeches this morning with us. What happens now that we've spoken with Robert about what's going on in Israel? What happens for the people of Gaza and the Palestinians in the West Bank as far as their future and who will govern?
Sure. I think we have to look at this in terms of timeline, Errol. For the now, for today, in these hours, there is no doubt a sense of relief in the Gaza Strip. Some people, many people can think they can rest at least now with this ceasefire. And we're also seeing reunions of families in the Strip, but also we're seeing reunions of Palestinian detainees that have come into the Gaza Strip after being released from Offer prison earlier today. Also on top of that, if this peace then holds, the bigger question then is the rebuilding and the reconstruction that needs to happen over the months and the years ahead. Not only that, as we're seeing on our screen now, so many people are looking for their lost loved ones, potentially dead loved ones. More than 67,000 people are officially confirmed dead, according to the Hamas-run Health Ministry. They are going back to homes that potentially are not there. What then happens from that? And then, of course, there is the humanitarian aid that now theoretically should start flowing soon over these next few days. 600 trucks a day is what the United Nations says must happen. But these are all, open questions the further and further along we get in terms of a timeline. And then for the West Bank, as you asked, the question there is what happens with, for example, a future Palestinian state. Donald Trump, during his speech, didn't talk about anything more than a cursory, potential idea of a state. But there's no guarantee in the Trump peace plan of any Palestinian state actually coming to fruition. Netanyahu has also drawn a red line around Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas to have some kind of voice in this. And of course, we know that Hamas will not have a voice in this. So again, a lot of these open questions, it feels as if there is a lot of hope, a lot of joy that President Trump has put out there in his 1 hour, 20-minute speech. But then the devil here, many devils are in the many, many details.
Yeah, Mahmoud Abbas is scheduled to appear at this summit in Egypt, and so we'll see what happens today. Ramy, thank you very much.